Hello everyone, and let's talk about the news that EverQuest Next has been cancelled. Okay, Daybreak Studios, who were formerly were Sony Online Entertainment, but they went independent a few years ago. They were the developers of EverQuest 1 and 2, and EverQuest Next was meant to be the next big, there you go, next big MMO in the EverQuest franchise. EverQuest 1 still going, actually. It's been out since, what, the late 90s? EverQuest 2 was, what, early 2000s or something like that came out. So they're both still going to be online, but EverQuest Next was meant to be the sort of next generation of the EverQuest franchise, at least, in the MMO. So, does this signal that the MMO bubble has finally burst, at least as far as big publishers are concerned? As far as AAA MMOs are concerned, this was one of the bigger ones that was coming out. Also, the news that Wildstar is not going to launch in China, and as a result, they have fired, basically. They've paid off a lot of their staff. They've let a lot of their staff go. This is pretty bad news for the MMO industry, which is on a massive decline at the moment. You know, it is very, very difficult for new games to get a foothold. I mean, these two news are kind of similar, kind of related to each other. EverQuest Next, they've decided that it's not worth bringing to market, and Wildstar is a game which has already been out for nearly 2 years now, which had a free-to-play conversion last year. It's still struggling, you know, and is it a surprise, really? Not really, because the MMO market is pretty overcrowded at the moment. Launching into this market is a very, very difficult thing to do, even with a name like EverQuest. I mean, everyone who plays MMOs has heard of EverQuest. You know, it was one of the first big successful MMOs out there. Eventually got overtaken by World of Warcraft. Even World of Warcraft is struggling at the moment. You know, the last time they released subscription numbers at Blizzard, they were around the 5 million mark, and they were just over 5 million, which for WoW, considering it had, you know, recently, when Warlords of Draenor launched, its peak was around 10 million, so they've lost nearly half their subscribers. Now, they've stopped releasing subscriber numbers, so I imagine it will probably be a bit lower than 5 million. Even if the market leader is struggling, then there's really no hope for anybody else to get into the market, anyone new to get into the market. Now, this leads us to another point, is what about SWTOR? You know, because it's still hanging in there. We've seen a lot of games cancelled, particularly by EA. Last year, a lot of games got shut down. You know, you had Need for Speed, Battlefield, Play for Free, games like that, all shut down last year by EA. So SWTOR, get the feeling it's still profitable. You know, it certainly seems to be profitable, because EA would pull the trigger if this game was unprofitable. Certainly. EA certainly would. Do you know what EA are like? So, you know, they will, you know, so it must be profitable. I mean, SWTOR does have the added benefit of being attached to arguably the biggest franchise in entertainment, I would say. Star Wars encompasses a massive variety of entertainment. The movie, look at The Force Awakens, look at Episode 7. It was, you know, it broke all the box office records in December when it came out, so that is still a massive franchise, Star Wars. You got Battlefront as well. It's a console shooter. You know, it's doing pretty well. It did 13 million units shipped. EA are pretty pleased with that. They're also pretty pleased with the performance. They said in their latest quarterly earnings release that they were pleased with the performance of SWTOR. Now, they lumped it in with Star Wars mobile crap game. I don't know what it's called, but it's Star Wars, some microtransaction-laden mobile crap game. They did label it with that as a success. They did mention Battlefront separately. So Battlefront is clearly going to be the sort of leader in terms of the Star Wars games. It's going to be certainly EA are going to push that first. But SWTOR is, you know, is performing at least satisfactory for EA. So the question begs is, how long does SWTOR have left? Certainly the quality of the game has certainly dropped dramatically, okay? If you look at the latest patch, 4.2, Chapter 11 very rarely worked. I still can't get that force field open, even after the patch. I've clicked all the things, I've followed everything, and I still can't get it open. So that's where I am in SWTOR, really. And also the PvE community at this stage is pretty much a corpse. Just poking a corpse with a stick. Now, if we talk about the PvE community these days, it is dying. Slowly. That's the PvE community. PvP, at least they've got something to cling to. At least they're not playing. They're all playing on the PTS, testing out the new Warzone and the new arena. So at least there's something for the PvP community to do. PvE, we've got fuck all to do basically. We're at that stage. It's 6 months since the release of Knights of the Fallen Empire, and we've hit that stage where we're kind of bored of the current content, and this is why I think 6 months is the right time for a new raid tier. 6 months is just the perfect time. If you're starting to get sick of the current tier and you're ready to move on, but there's nothing to move on to. There's an hour's worth of story content every month. That's what you're paying your subscription for, which a lot of people are saying is just not worth it. I mean, especially when you can just wait until chapter 16 and subscribe for a month and play all the chapters. And you probably get it done in a month, because chapter 10 was meh in terms of story. It was pretty boring, if we're honest. Kaleo's an interesting character. I just never really cared about Firebrand and Zakul Society. I never cared about that. Chapter 11 started out okay, but it's so buggy right now that I can't finish it. Jorgen being naked, and then he doesn't show up as a companion when you get him. You get him as a kind. I think you'll get him as a companion at the end. I haven't finished it, I don't know. But you don't get him again when he comes back, when, you're supposed to summon him, and you can't summon him if he's naked. The way I found to get around that as a trooper, certainly, I think they fixed it in the patch, but as a trooper, if you summoned him either before you started Knights of the Fallen Empire or via the terminal in the Alliance base, if you summoned him there and took his weapon off of him, I think that is what caused it. But obviously, if you're not a trooper, you can't do this. So as a trooper, as a vanguard, so as a trooper, we can take all his gear off and then dismiss him again. And then, that way when you meet him in the story, at least it forces him to wear his new gear. He's not naked, It's a cat in the jungle, I guess. He's a Cathar in the jungles, I guess, being naked, Maybe that's what they do. Maybe that's what Cathar do when they hit the jungles, or the swamp, should we say, of Zakul. Just get naked. It's maybe a rainforest. It's hot in the rainforest. Maybe that's why he's naked. But yeah, that was an interesting bug. The other bug where you have the 3 power lines that you've got to follow to the force field, you click all 3 of them, and then of course the force field doesn't open. Awesome work from BioWare there. So yeah, but we'll get back on topic about MMOs in general. Is what we're saying. There is a massive decline. I think Wildstar's problem was that it launched into the marketplace with no name recognition. That was the problem. What was Wildstar? Yeah, I mean, it did have a few, Carbine Studios were untested, really, as a developer team. I know they had a lot of ex-Blizzard employees and so forth, but, they were untested. They had a franchise that didn't have any recognition. You look at, again, we've explained SWTOR had, one of the biggest franchises in entertainment, the biggest franchise in entertainment attached to it. Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, of course, has Final Fantasy attached to it. That's one of the biggest franchises in video games. So, Elder Scrolls Online is the same. These games that came out around about the similar kind of time frame as Wildstar, they had big brand names behind them. They had a brand name. Wildstar, if you just look at Wildstar on a store shelf or a digital storefront, you're just going to walk right past it, generally, because, what the hell's Wildstar? Now, I do agree that Wildstar's marketing was pretty good. Okay, Wildstar had really decent marketing. I loved their little videos that they did where they explained the classes. They were awesome. But when you got into the game, it was boring. It was so boring. It was just a run-of-the-mill, bog-standard MMO. Was Wildstar. It offered nothing really special gripped you. I mean, SWTOR had, you know, the fully voice-acted cutscenes at least, and you had dialogue choices, and the fact that it's a Star Wars game, it's set in the Old Republic universe, you know, which is still, you still get to be a Jedi, still get to be a Sith, you can be a bounty hunter, whatever. You could sell that fantasy of the Star Wars universe. Elder Scrolls Online had, you know, it was based on an Elder Scrolls game. The combat was very much like an Elder Scrolls game. You did have dialogue choices, you did have quite an interesting story in ESO, and Final Fantasy XIV had quite a good story as well, weirdly enough. It was pretty decent, and it had, of course, Final Fantasy attached to that as well. Wildstar just was a run-of-the-mill, bog-standard, go, click the NPCs, get a bunch of quests. Very little voice acting, very little dialogue. It did have an interesting graphical style. I liked the kind of cartoony type style. I was a fan of that, I have to say, about Wildstar. But, you know, EverQuest Next might have been successful. We can't really talk hugely about EverQuest Next because it never came out. So you don't really know whether it would have been massively successful. But it is sad to see that the marketplace appears to be certainly shrinking. The MMO markets. We say that just as the Division launches, really. Maybe that's the future of MMOs, is to take them all to consoles. Maybe that's the future. You know, you look at Destiny, they found quite a reasonable amount of success now. Bungie have managed to find some success with Destiny. You've got the Division, which is available on PC, I get that, but is a sort of quasi-MMO cover-based shooter. Maybe that's the future. Maybe that's where we're heading to with the MMO market. The MMORPG may be on the way out. I mean, you might be seeing more MMO shooters, racing games. You got The Crew as well, came out recently, a few years ago, 2 years ago now, from Ubisoft as well, which I need to download actually and play. Because I got it as part of a Humble bundle, so certainly I will have a look at that, have a download at that, and check that out, certainly. I've got to get the Division, decide I'm going to get it on PC. I didn't have any internet for 3 weeks, so I cancelled my pre-order, obviously, because I don't know when I'm going to be back online, so I cancelled that. So I will check that out for the PC and see if that's any good. Destiny I wasn't a fan of, but maybe that's the future. Maybe we need to get away from the traditional RPG elements and push it more towards other genres. We're already seeing that at the moment, but maybe that's the future. What do you think is the future of MMOs? Or do MMOs have a future? Really, is that going to be a thing? I think they do have some sort of future. I think World of Warcraft is not going to go anywhere. I'm pretty convinced that it's going to be difficult to dethrone WoW. Nothing, I don't think, is going to take WoW away from its position as kind of the market leader. But we had a lot of companies try and fail, certainly. But, you know, interesting to see where the future goes. Or is the future just going to be MOBAs and mobile games? They're going to be the future, I guess, because they're easy to produce. Well, they're easier to produce than an MMO, and can be produced on a relatively low budget. Certainly, that's the future of gaming, I guess, is low budget, crappy games. But anyway, thank you for joining me. I'll see you again soon, and goodbye.